Hello, my name is Claudia De Fraia and I teach at Loyola University of Chicago, but I also teach in other schools of the area to adults, basically. So in this micro teaching session of mine, I want to expose what I would teach in class at college, because this is a course about higher education, and I believe that I should focus on university students. Okay, so first of all, generally speaking, this is valid also for classes of adults. If I think about the backwards design, of course, I would focus on the learning outcomes and see why am I teaching something specific. And also I would determine which are the acceptable or which is the acceptable evidence that I can use. How can I see if my students are effectively learning and understanding, first of all, and learning whatever I'm teaching them. And then, of course, I would pay attention to the material I want to use, because, of course, I don't teach, as you suggest, contents on the basis only of the textbook that we have. Now, once I said that, it is important to understand that at university level, there's no much choice I have. I need to follow a syllabus, and I need to follow specific programs, and I cannot choose what my students need to learn. I can enhance and give priority to some parts of my language instruction, but I don't have much choice. Another important point is that when I'm outside university, I usually use an inductive method. Why? Because I usually teach adults, for instance, at the Italian Cultural Institute, the School of the Consulate. I teach adults the language, right? And I have 2 hours per week, sometimes 4 hours per week. And that's a lot. So I'm allowed to use, first of all, to choose the pace I want to go with the program. Secondly, I have lots of time, so I can use the inductive method. Now, I have another problem in that school, because I usually have elderlies, and elderlies don't like an independent study. They don't like having an active part into the learning process. They are used to a deductive methodology, and they want the teacher to have a class teacher-centered. They want the class, we say in Italiano, pappa pronta, the food ready for them. So you need to prepare the class and prepare the lesson, tell them how the rule works, and that's it. Whereas students at university like to be more active in the learning process. So the inductive methodology would be the best option. Unfortunately, there's not the time, because at university, I meet my students 1 hour for 1 hour and 15 minutes on Tuesday and Thursday. So 2 hours and a half in total for a week. And there's not much time for that. So I'm most of the time obliged to use a deductive approach. Okay, said that, let's say I chose for this micro teaching session to talk about, for instance, the explanation of or the studying of the present tense of irregular verbs. What do I do? First of all, in the phase of introduction that you propose, I would ask students to see if they remember the present tense of regular verbs and how they work. I could build a schema with them. I'd rather not give them a pre-prepared schema, but I would build it with them just to engage them and to practice retrieval. Because otherwise, if I give them a piece of paper or I share my screen with them in class, telling them, oh, do you remember all this conjugation? I don't think I'm going to get much of it from it. Also, an important thing, sometimes I have in class at 10-15% of Italo-Americans, and they usually love helping me building or reviewing rules. So I might ask these students or other ones who are not Italo-Americans to help me redoing the schema so that we can review the present tense of regular verbs. After that, I can explain and try to find some patterns with the irregular verbs, explaining them how they work, what are the endings, And especially in this phase, which is basically not only the introduction, but we're entering in the globalization phase, I tell them why we're studying that. And I also usually make some jokes, like I tell them, hey, you know that in Italian you can use the present tense to talk about future? Because for us, the future is something uncertain, so we rarely use it, or we use it for specific context. They love that. And so I'm like, so you are purchasing one, but you're getting two. You're getting through the present tense, also the future. Can you believe that? And so I try to motivate them to study this part. And I also tell them that it's very important that they learn the present tense so that they can describe their activities, their actions. They can have a basic conversation with an Italian, and blah, 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 all the things we know. During the body of class, I usually organize activities in groups. I usually use the in this case, I cannot use concept maps, debates for this part of the study, because I'm teaching them, I'm basically teaching them grammar. Okay, so I can build some part of it, but usually and using a deductive method, I need to put them in front of the rules. So I usually can do matching games where I put or classification games where I put, for instance, a verb all mixed, or 3-4 verbs all mixed, which are irregular, and they have to figure out the first, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth per person. It also depends on the number of people I have in class. If I have 10 people, we can do it all together, and we can recreate the conjugation of irregular verbs. Or if I have 20 people, I can divide the class in 5 groups, and they can act together. They can work together through the practice of think, pair, and share. In the share phase, not only I ask them to tell me the conjugation, but I also ask them if they can do it without reading. That could be a practice, for instance. Also, an important thing about my class, my micro, which is, I think, is essential. I don't like the traditional way, usually, of having the class with me in the center of the classroom and all these lines of desks. No, I usually put my students in circle so they can see each other and talk to each other and share information in a different way. We are like a big family talking to each other. And if they need to get together because they have to do the think, pair, and share, they just can do small circles and then go back to the original position. But that's an important part of my teaching. So let's say that the analysis phase is done together. If I have some students who have several problems in learning languages, I put them with good students so that they can benefit from peer instruction. And I go around sometimes I go around the groups, or sometimes I leave them alone. It really depends on the energy that is in class. Sometimes I feel like students wanna do their work and then show off their Italian when we are all together. What else? So that's the body. For the conclusion, I ask them usually to, for instance, I could ask them to go home and in the synthesis phase and synthesis phase. So to sum up what they learn, I ask them to go and write maybe a small diary or of the activity they're going to do in the weekends and send it to me via email, and then I give them a feedback. And then we start every week practicing these verbs, because every time I see them in class, I can ask, hey, what are you doing after class? Or what are you eating? Or what are you reading? In Italian, of course. And I can tell them about myself. You also asked me in the homework to describe, let me read 1 second. I'm sorry, guys. You asked me to an analogy or a storytelling that I have in class. Listen, it really depends. For instance, if I'm usually in the evaluation, students laugh, write that I'm funny, and they love my anecdotes and stories. But I can tell you one or two that come to my mind right now. For instance, there was once I was with adults, and there was a verb, legare, which is to tie, and leggere was the other verb, which was to read. And I remember the students had to say what they like doing, and this was an exercise on a book, and they could match different places where they would like to do the activity, right? So this priest who I had in class started saying that he liked legare a letto, and I was like, no, no, father, you don't like legare a letto, you like leggere a letto, you like reading in bed. And it's not that he kept on saying legare, but he said at least another time leggere, oh, sorry, legare, to tie. And I said, I'm sorry, father, one thing makes you masochist because it means to tie someone in bed, or the other one makes you an intellectual. Choose the best one. And so these are stories, and there was like students loved it and couldn't stop laughing. Or I don't know, I really make jokes that make the class fun, I believe. The other day, I was teaching adults at the Italian Cultural Institute, and one of them kept on saying, instead of faccio, I make, I do, faccio. And I'm like, I'm sorry, do you understand? Do you really think it's faccio? Do you really think it's faccio? And that was an hilarious moment for the class. Lastly, one thing that I tell them, always tell them to not feel embarrassed when they read. I have a strong accent, but my messages go through. I try to improve it, but it's hard. I'm old. And I tell them they are still in time because they are young to kind of speak a better Italian without a strong accent. If they can do that, that would be amazing. And I usually tell them a funny story that they love. They even ask me to say it again in class. They asked me to talk about the fact that one moment when I was at the Blue Line here in Chicago, it was night, and I saw a guy beating up another guy. I got really scared. So I went at the end of the platform and I called the police. And it was the very beginning of my experience in Chicago. And I called the police and I said, hello, yes, hello, there's a man. Yes, he's eating another man. And the policewoman said, what is he eating? And I'm like, he's eating his hands, his eyes, his cheeks, because I knew that the word hand at the age, but I didn't know that the word hit at the age. So I said, eat. And so basically, at the end of the story, people thought, I mean, the police thought I was with a cannibal on the plane, on the platform. And so I tell them through this joke how important it is to learn the pronunciation of a language. And so I hope that I answer all the questions you had. And yeah, thank you for listening. And I hope I didn't pass 10 minutes. Thanks. Bye-bye. Bye.